in the Sacramento region, we do have an acute shortage of special education teachers, both for students with mild to moderate disabilities and also for students with moderate to severe disabilities. And actually in our state, for the first time in decades, our state sends information to the federal government about shortage areas. And for the first time in decades, we basically had shortages in every single subject area except for physical education. So the teacher shortage is very dire. Some aspects of the teacher shortage are newer than others. The teacher shortage in special education classrooms is historic, and so it's very exciting to me that we're actually trying to, in a systematic way, address this particular shortage area. But beyond the numbers, your typical teacher going into a special education classroom and other classrooms in the Sacramento region is going to face a student population that's primarily low income, that's primarily students of color, and 1 in 3, or depending on the district, 1 in 4 of your students is going to be an English learner. And if you're a special education teacher, then they're going to have some kind of disability, whether it's learning, emotional, that kind of thing. So it's a very, very complex population that our typical teacher, and even more so a special education teacher, works with. And they need really specialized tools that they kind of dominate in deep but also flexible ways. So, you know, the teachers that we're trying to prepare with this program, they're going to have solid content knowledge, but they're not going to be the kind of teacher that can only recite facts and figures. They're going to be thinking really creatively about their content knowledge. They're going to understand not only how a student acquires the content, but really where some of the pitfalls and missteps and misconceptions and misunderstandings occur for students, particularly students who have atypical development. And they're going to anticipate those difficulties so that they're not doing correction, but they're actually really doing prevention, because they understand both the content, the difficulties with the content, and then how students across a spectrum of typical and atypical development actually acquire, understand, and sort of solidify content knowledge, facts and figures, those kinds of things. I think this teacher that we're trying to create, and why this marriage of different specialties is really so, I think, brilliant. This teacher really needs to understand children and adolescents and how they develop, both typically and atypically, and they need to understand that across a number of different dimensions. So it's social-emotional development, it's cognitive development, and then I think particularly important because of the communities that we serve here in Sacramento, it's identity development. So we need to help students develop an identity as a learner, as somebody who accomplishes, as somebody who produces, as somebody who contributes. So that kind of skill comes very, very easily through the marriage of a child development BA and the two credentials, elementary and ed specialists. I think the final thing I wanted to I think there's 2 other things that I wanted to talk about. One is collaboration skills. So more and more, the school reality for teachers is a collaborative reality, which really helps students be part of an adult community that attends to many dimensions of their growth and development. So collaboration skills, special education with general education teachers, any kind of teacher with school counselors, with family and student advocates, with other folks in the community. Those skills are exceedingly important, and I think key to that is really understanding how to keep the needs of a student as a central focus, and then bring as many resources together so that student can flourish. And I think this program really, just in the way that it's set up and the different field experiences that are imagined for these future teachers, they will develop very effective collaboration skills. And then finally, something that is a good thing for even me to learn, technological proficiency. So more and more these days, particularly a special educator, needs to know how to use the very essential tools of the trade, adaptive and assistive technologies in the classroom.
So with that, we have the ACT pathway that's really designed to provide a clear pathway for future education specialists, particularly in mild, moderate disabilities at this time. So what are some of the benefits? It has an accelerated timeline. So right now, when you walk in as a freshman, it's going to take you about 6 years to leave with your bachelor's degree and your dual credential, which would be the mild, moderate, and multiple subjects credential. This pathway is really designed to be 4.5 years if you're going full-time for all those semesters. It provides clear guidelines for the courses and other requirements. And so in accelerating the timeline, we're able to kind of put the classes together so that students are taking credential coursework before they have their bachelor's degree so that they are moving through that content faster. And also one continuous pathway of advising and support. So when they come in and they know what they want to do, then this gives them the guideline that's going to put them out in 4.5 years with that goal achieved. And next I have, are you talking? Sorry, Unmi has joined us here. She was teaching earlier, and I just wasn't sure. I'll keep going. Okay. So for both native Sac State students that come here as freshmen and community college students who transfer here, this program is really open to all of those students. So during the first 2 years, they would be taking their lower division major requirements, general education, and any additional transferable major coursework. So those are just some examples of the courses that we envision in those first 2 years, along with, of course, all those other GE requirements. And then they would apply for the program in the 4th semester to begin the pre-professional phase in the 5th semester. So they may choose to take some summer courses to catch up if they haven't been able to do so. And then beginning in if they're transfer students, it would be their first semester here at Sac State, or for native students, they would just be continuing in their 5th semester. They'll be taking their upper division major requirements, general education, and some credential coursework, like I said, that's peppered in with their bachelor coursework. And these are just the courses that would be required to complete their BA. So once they've completed their general education requirements, their major requirements, and 120 units, then they can apply for their bachelor's degree, apply to graduate with their bachelor's. Of course, that means that they'll move then to their final student teaching phase and complete their credential coursework, at which time they'll earn their multiple subjects and mild moderate teaching credentials. So some details, it may be way more than you want to know at this time. And so in case you're wondering, in the advising handbook, there are these details. So if you want to just kind of take in what you can at this time, that would be fine. These are all of the courses required for this version of the child development major. It looks very similar to those of you who might be familiar with the child development major already. It looks very similar to the pre-credential concentration.
Okay, so with that, we in our college, we have our outstanding programs in special education. So we do have an early childhood, a special education program, as well as moderate to severe, and also mild. So that throughout the whole program in our college, we wanted to just show you what we do to train our teacher candidates in special ed. So 3 pathways on the special education. So first one, let me go to the, I am focusing this slide, the MARMAT credential, how to get it, and also how to add multiple subject credential. Out of 23 CSU campuses, not all the campuses offer dual credentials. And we are one of those lucky ones to be able to provide dual credential program for students who wanted to teach both in gen ed and special ed. Okay, so when they come in this ACT program, they will complete the BA first and then start to take the credential courses. They will complete first the multiple subject credential, followed by the module credential. So MARMA only credential candidate will take those classes. Then MARMA and MARMA and the multiple subject, they are combined courses. They must take it. So that those are the method class with a language and literacy course. Then to add multiple subject to the MARMA credential, those are the other methodology courses in content-specific courses, as well as they need to complete a TPA. And we do have a lab course for them to prepare. And also we have a BAPA class, which is a visual and performing art, as well as our student teaching. So they will go out to student teaching in multiple subject setting and half a day. Then follow up with a full day. So it's a 15 weeks. So it's a comprehensive student teaching experiences. I know district directors, especially in special ed, they like our program and graduate from our program because we do have a very extensive student teaching practicums, very systematic way. Okay.
So how would students get started this fall 2018? So this kind of gives you an idea of what the first group will look like. So fall 2018, they're entering as freshmen either at the community college or at Sac State, and they are being advised through the child development majors that exist at this time. Complete the lower division general education courses, so those are some things they'll be doing, lower division major courses, and those are all listed in the handbook as well, and some additional transferable prerequisites. So prior to applying to the program, we want them to have experience both in an elementary classroom and in a special education setting, and so that they can kind of try it on and make sure that they want to invest all this time and energy into that career. So Education 100A and B is that special education experience fieldwork course, and they also need to have passed the CBEST. So for those of you at the community college, those are kind of these first 2 years, those are the things you'd want to kind of help them work on at that time. And then, of course, they would need to apply to Sac State, only for transfer students if they're not already going here, at the typical time that they would apply to Sac State. And then specifically for the ACT program, they would need to apply in the spring of that second year. And then once they are here, they'll begin the upper division major coursework and follow along that pathway we were just talking about. What if someone wants a waiver for the CSET exam? You might be aware that the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing just started again allowing there to be a waiver program. We do have options for the waiver programs at Sac State, but the ACT pathway is not one of those options because we just would have to, we can't fit it all in. Yeah. But we are working on an advising pathway so that if a student really, really wants to get that waiver, then we're looking at trying to minimize the number of additional classes they need to take. But that's in progress and not anything that we can guarantee at this time.
Kristen, can I just add one little detail to that so people understand the policy context? So the subject matter waiver programs that waive future teachers from having to take the CSET exams, those requirements are determined by the CTC. Offering a program like this that has an accelerated timeline, these programs are governed by the CSU and policies around what integrated programs look like and how many units there can be and that kind of thing. So it takes expert problem-solving skills. Mm-hmm. And like I think me and Kristen can do, a 5-dimensional Rubik's Cube because they've been able to figure this out. But there are at least two different sets of requirements that they're trying to negotiate, and they don't always complement each other. Sometimes they exist in contradiction. contradiction to each other, so anyway. So I think part of the issue is to provide as many options as possible to students, and then students have to kind of figure out, you know, if I wanted to get done in 4.5 years, then I'm gonna have to take advantage of some resources from Karina's shop, for example, for CSET prep support. We have a lot of CSET prep support. Or I really, really don't want to take that test, and I'm willing to go for an extra semester or summer session or that kind of thing so that I support it.
So what will be required to apply? So now we're talking about in 2 years, in that spring of the second year. So students will engage in those activities that I was talking about earlier, take their GE classes. Transfer students could follow the associate degree for transfer plan, but the advising plan that we give you here is more efficient. So it's just going to help them get through their program faster that way. They need to pass the CBES, like I said, and maintain a 2.75 GPA with no required courses below a grade of C. And like I said, applications will be available at that time in the spring of that second year for that first cohort and ongoing. Interrupt me if you have any questions about whatever I'm saying. What if a student doesn't meet these requirements or isn't admitted or changes his or her mind? So that happens, right? As an entering freshman, there are a lot of things to experience. There are multiple alternative pathways that exist to pursue the child development bachelor's degree, the special education credentials, and the general education credentials. And so we're going to turn now from talking about the ACT program specifically to just give you a little bit of information about those other programs. So those students who start on the pathway and don't get in, maybe they don't have the GPA or the coursework, there are still alternative pathways if that's something that they really want to pursue. Or maybe they're in the ACT pathway and they miss one of the milestones and they end up out. They're not just out of luck, there are still options. So also, like I just said, what if a student enters the program and can't keep up or is disqualified? They would have options to join one of the other pathways with minimal changes, so changing to a different child development bachelor's pathway, and they could apply via typical means to credential programs, so the means that exist right now to apply to the credential programs. So there's a lot more information in your handbook, but starting on page 5, there's information about the bachelor's in child development and some detailed information about each of the concentrations and what courses you might want to advise them to take during those first 2 years, and then what other courses are going to be required. But we have 5 different concentrations aside from the ACT pathway. One is early development care and education, really designed for those early childhood educators, early childhood special education, interventionists. We also have the social and community settings, which can include a variety of different careers, including child life specialists, health care counselors, interventionists, community programming. Also, the 2 that are kind of geared toward teaching now, elementary pre-credential and the integrated pre-credential subject matter. So this is the CSET waiver program, like Kia was discussing. It's a very prescribed list of courses, and it does not follow the typical GE pattern. So it's something that freshmen really do need to know about right when they walk in the door if they want to follow that kind of pattern. And the elementary pre-credential follows the typical GE pattern and is a little more flexible. And then the individualized is our most flexible, personalized option. And like I said, in your handout, it gives you a little more information about exactly what's required for those degrees. And now I will bring up Lee.
So come back to special education, the education specialist program. On your packet, starting from page 13, I'd like to introduce the 3 programs. And luckily, we have 3 program coordinators here, so we will be introducing each program. So Cindy's here as an early childhood special education program coordinator. And then also we have a severe Kathy Jeezy here. And myself, I'm coordinating the moderate dual credential program. So all three programs are embedded with English language authorization, as well as autism spectrum disorders. So even moderate credential candidates, when they complete our program, they can go out to teach the aspect of the students with autism spectrum disorder. Okay? So the goal is to provide inclusive, person-centered curriculum. So whatever we do, we preach and practice in our college. We want it to be child-centered. We want it to be inclusive practices. So we wanted to also implement co-teaching model so that we can teach and work together with general population and general teachers. So we don't have your students and my students anymore. It's our students. Whatever we do, we are centering the students at the center of what we practice, what we believe in. Okay, next. Oh, jeez. Okay, so Cindy is going to talk about the early childhood special education program.
Okay. Hello, I'm Cindy. So this program is actually, it died out years ago and it's coming back now. So this year I've been working on restarting this program in our special ed department. Excuse me. So this is a program that is training teachers to teach birth to 6 years old. And they've just passed through the council for the CTC that it would go up to 6 years old. So right now we're in this weird transition period where we're training them to work with families in the home-based services for infant and toddlers with disabilities, and then also train them to be preschool teachers where they're working in more school-based services. And eventually it will extend to kindergarten as well, whenever that happens. And so the unique thing about the early childhood special education credential is that we're training them to work with families, especially. It's very family focused because we're going to be going into their homes and supporting them if they have infants and toddlers with disabilities. And it's a shift in our field from focusing, it used to be very intervention focused, so we'd go in once a week, work with a child and provide the services. Realize that doesn't give us the best bang for our buck, and so what the change has been is to focus on training the families, and so that the families are the ones that we're coaching. So there's two different models that in this program we're working on, is that we need to train our educators to be coaches of families and understand their experiences, and then also be teachers to provide direct services to children with disabilities. And so and then we're also training them to work with children with disabilities with a range of disabilities, from mild to severe. So I know we have the two credential programs, that's mild to moderate and then moderate to severe, but in the early childhood field, we're across them. And then the other aspect to share with you is that the alums from our program, they are early intervention specialists, so they're working in the infant and toddler programs in the districts, and those are those home-based services for birth to 3-year-olds with disabilities. And then also they are preschool special education teachers, and they are in a wide range of programs. So there's inclusion programs where they're co-teaching with general education preschool teachers. They're also in separate programs as well where they're focused on just their students with disabilities. And we have education consultants as well, and then after years of teaching, we also have program specialists who are helping those teachers. And so that's our early child special ed program. We just had the go-ahead that it's actually starting this fall, so we're excited. So we have enough applicants that we're starting this fall, and for the future as well. So this is a 2-year program. All of ours are roughly 2-year programs.
Where's the back? Okay, so this is the program that I coordinate with our other faculty members. So we serve the students from age 5 and then up until the 21 years old. And it's a grade, in terms of the grade level, it's a kindergarten through 12th grade. However, we also help them to transition high school program up until 22 years old with a credential. And disabilities of our students we serve are mild to moderate. if you got your first credential a long time ago, we used to call LH credential. That's what I am. 20-some years ago, it was a learning handicap credential. But nowadays, we call it mild to moderate education specialist credential. Mainly, we are teaching the students with specific learning disabilities, as well as other intellectual disabilities, but it's mild to moderate degrees, and also other health impairment. And also another major group that we are teaching is the serious emotional disturbance. So EBD and behavior disorders, we have to teach those populations. And also we, because of the autism spectrum disorders authorization that we provide, we are able to teach also students with autism spectrum disorders and English learners with mild moderate disabilities. And because they are getting 2 credentials, if they are working on dual credential, we have them to work on the multiple, it's kind of seamlessly orchestrated into 4 semesters. So when they come in, they just take the classes without practicum yet. And then the following semester, which is the second semester, they are taking classes while they are going out to do field experience. Then the third semester, second fall, they are completing their multiple subject credential by completing all the methodology courses at campus, as well as they are doing the student teaching. Full day, 15 weeks at the public school settings, and some exceptional educational settings as well. Then the following semester, the 4th semester, which is the second year, and they will be completing their mild, moderate education specialist credential by completing their coursework in MARMAT, as well as completing full day, 15 weeks of student teaching at the special education programs for students with mild, moderate disabilities. And when they graduate, after they graduate, of course, they become a special education teacher in kindergarten through to 21 years old. And also, they can be multiple subject teacher in a GENET program, pre-K to 8th grade. So, and then they become an education specialist, later on program specialist, or whatever they keep pursuing. However, current trend, 1/3 of our dual credential program graduate, they started to teach GENET first, with the intention that they wanted to make some differences in general education. And then they intentionally include more students with IEPs as a GENET teacher. Then they teach a couple of years, then they feel more comfortable and set up themselves at the school site, and then they transfer themselves as a special education teacher. And 2/3 directly they become a special education teachers in MARMAT. Then while they are teaching, if they are tired and burnout, then instead of dropping from teaching, leaving teaching position, they go back to general education and then teach a while and then back and forth. That's what I did. I become a GENET teacher first, and then SH, which was the moderate to severe teacher, and then I burned out. Then I become an LH teacher, which is the MARMAT. So I could, during my 16 years of teaching in the field, I back and forth, so GENET and MARMAT, moderate severe. So I think that makes sense. All right, so that's for the MARMAT. Now I'm going to invite the program coordinator for moderate to severe program.
Okay, I'm Kathy, and I do coordinate them on severe program and the dual, moderate, severe, multiple subject program. And very similar to what Dr. Cho was saying, our program is age 5 to 21, and so we try very hard to give experiences in both elementary school and secondary school. So we make sure that our students student teach in both secondary settings and in elementary settings. The program is very competency-based, so there's field work every semester. In the first year, they're spending 2 days a week in the fall and 3 days in the spring, and then in the second year of the program, they're going four full days a week, and then in the spring, they're going 5 full days a week for student teaching. So the students that they serve out there, it's a very exciting population to serve. They have moderate to severe intellectual disabilities, but they also might have deaf blindness, other sensory disabilities. They might have autism. They might have physical disabilities, multiple disabilities. And it's a very exciting field to go into. So in terms of those of you who are working in junior colleges or community colleges, you know, I think just getting people to think about this field as an opportunity, encouraging them to get some experience, find out more about it. They're welcome to come and talk to me. I think it's good to start thinking early on for those of you who are community college advisors. People in our field, again, similar to what Cindy and me have said, typically graduate to be an education specialist. Oftentimes, even if they get their dual credential, they're more focused on being the specialist in a moderate severe program. But we encourage the dual credential because we want them to collaborate with their general ed partners out there to include all students in general education. So it's really important that they're well versed in the core curriculum so that students with severe disabilities can have meaningful access to the core curriculum. So those skills in multiple subject really help them out. But again, because there's a large population from grade 7 to age 21, we want our students to really understand high schools as well and understand transition to adult life. So they get good preparation in supported living, supported employment, sort of college and career readiness for students with disabilities. So, and our graduates also, we have a number of graduates out there that are now program specialists and or TOSA, called a TOSA, teacher on special assignment, coaching other teachers and things like that. So, I think there's
I wanted
one
to cover this one too. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we recommend is that you encourage undergrads to get some experience. You know, go volunteer in a school, go tutor, work at a summer camp, you know, do recreation programs that include kids with disabilities. But we really would like, when you're encouraging them to get those experiences, try to encourage them to get integrated experiences, not go to, for instance, a special school where everyone's segregated, but try to encourage them to get those kinds of positive experiences where kids, typically developing kids and kids with disabilities are doing things together, because that's kind of where we're headed, and that's where the field is going. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
So, not, yes.
Sorry, to put my special ed colleagues on the spot, but if the folks in the room don't readily have a list of possible places, is that something that we could provide them
Yes.
with?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, these are some of the classes I think that as undergrads would be helpful to take just as background, classes in developmental psychology or child development, communication skills, because teachers need good communication skills. We've had a number of communications majors who've come into our program, and it's a helpful background to have. Linguistics, motor development, kinesiology, those are all good courses to recommend, I think, especially if you're at the community college.
Also, if you look at pages 13 and 14 of your book, that has some of what we've been talking about here. So you can see some of the course recommendations for some of the different specializations within special ed.
Yes.
Before students like volunteer at public school, like do they need to do a background check, or can they just like walk in and be like, hey, like I want to volunteer? How does that work?
Most school districts are
Yeah,
gonna have
yeah. It depends
background.
on the district, but I just learned this morning, even at observation, that you must do the fingerprinting. So yeah, most districts are more restricted nowadays. Yes, it depends on the district. Yes, and not only the special education.
Yes, add a caveat to that, I'm so sorry.
Sure.
So, stay tuned. Because it really depends. If a student is going, now, and it's going to depend from district to district.
Yes.
But I think the general rule of thumb is if you're asking a student to do an assignment, a field task, even if it's ongoing, for your course, it's good to have an introductory letter. Probably most helpful for you to have established some relationships with that agency or school or a special teacher or whatever it might be. If the task does not require the student to have unsupervised time. So if the task can be done in a classroom where there's a certificated person somewhere in the vicinity, the fingerprinting is generally not required. So I think you just have to think through, like this just came up with one of our classes, and I got some clarification. Again, it differs from district to district, but to the extent that you can make your field tasks doable with, in the presence of a credentialed person, your students are going to not have to go through all that fingerprinting and pay and that kind of thing. Again, each district is slightly different, but the linchpin piece, from what I can see, is really, are they taking a student off to, sit at a bench, in front of school where nobody can see them, or can they just go off into a little corner and do the thing they need to do?
Right.
Sometimes they can't, and then they have to go through this more extensive process.
Yeah, I thought that I saw a program coordinator for the multiple subject. And anyway, we do offer multiple subject credential as well as single subject credentials as well. So we wanted to make sure to let them know not only special education credentials, we do offer the GENET, which is TK to 8th grade on all elementary subject matters, multiple subject, and then also single subject 9 to 12. So we have a very, various different kinds of credentials that we are offering. So where is my yes? So we wanted to capture the highlights of our presentation. That why do we do this today at this moment, and in this building and with you guys, is that ACT is a pathway leads to the 1BA in child development, and also we have a multiple subject teaching credential as well as a module teaching credential. For now, for the specific grant, for now we are focusing on Marymount. However, in future we really hope to continue this effort as a collaborative team with junior college faculty and administrators. And we wanted to expand to moderate to severe and also ECSE, because that's the area also we need to train from the colleges where you are teaching, you are working. So I think that this
So we just wanted to clarify, we just talked about a lot of programs now. So this is the ACT pathway, and then there are all of these other options for those students who this isn't the best fit
Right.
for.
So this is one way for them to get 1 BA and 2 credentials in 4.5 years.
Okay, I also wanted to point out, if you wanted more details that are even in the advising materials, there are some flyers for the program, so the child development flyer, and there's also a brochure. It's not folded for your ease of reading, but a brochure for the mild moderate credential program, and also a flyer for the special ed programs, all 3 of them. So it kind of breaks down what we were talking about, that there are these 3 programs that might fit students' career needs. And finally, flyer for the ACT program. It might look a little familiar, it might look kind of like the invitation you received, but it's more student-friendly and ready to put on your office door if you want to.
I just wanted to make a comment. The brochure for the mild, moderate, and multiple subject dual credential program composed my wonderful colleague, Dr. Duran is here. She initiated that great idea. And then we put yes, our chairs, of course, our chairs and help. And then the reason that I'm bringing up is that we need to make a little bit changes, because after we published, there are some changes because of the newly adopted TPAs in multiple subjects. So that's not updated. So we need to update this somewhere as well. Okay.
And then finally, on the last page of your advising handbook materials, there's contact information for the program coordinators you saw today, and also for Ashley.
Where is Ashley?
Ashley, we should have introduced you, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She is our Student Success Center coordinator and advisor extraordinaire. So she is also a great resource to talk to about advising students.
She has the most answers that we don't have. So we keep going back to her. Okay.
We know our programs, but she knows it all.
Yes. Okay, so
We have a survey and a blue sheet of paper. So we're going to move into the question answer part, but I just didn't want everyone to just exit us leave. So there's a blue sheet in your folder that we're asking you just to take this survey. If you're comfortable giving us your name and email, we can contact you further. But also just ask some questions about what more we can do. So like you've heard, we have a grant for this, and we'd really like to use somebody that's really interested in training educators, training special educators, and so we want to make use of these resources. So this questionnaire will kind of help us to discern how to best do
Kristen,
that.
how many students are starting in the fall? Do you know? Like, are there 20, 25?
We will be accepting cohorts of about 25, but they won't apply until spring 2020.
I see.
So these students starting in fall are starting in their respective current
So
programs.
you could have more than one cohort.
we plan to have only one cohort to start. Yeah.
Per year,
per fall.
It starts in child development first, right? And then later they proceed to special education.
Right, so right now they would be applying applying to Sac State for ideally the pre-credential option of child development. And then they would apply for this program in the spring of their second
And
year.
it's really exciting because as I've taught the 100 class and the 170, most of those students, when you ask them, what are you going to go into? They raise their hand, special education. So we've gotten some wonderful candidates from child development. Oh, I could name 10 right now. It's awesome. So I'm so glad this is being done because I came from a campus where you had separate, but you still had the undergraduate, and I was always hoping that we could get it here at Sacramento State, and it finally has become true. And I know Pia and Stephanie have worked on all of this, and I just salute all of you because it's quite an accomplishment to do something that's like this. You don't know until you see it in the written form, so I think it's just lovely. So on a scale of 1 to 10, this is definitely a 10 in my eyes for all of you.
Thank you. And this is the beginning. So if we look at the number 4 and 5, we're already preparing for one day professional development with this grant money. So that's why we are asking you, we set up the date. It's August 21st, it's a Tuesday. It'll be probably 9 to 2 or 3. It's a full day conference for these people, for us. So that if you put the topics, the 3 topics that you like us to work on it, to present, and we may not be the speakers, we may bring the presenters. So please share your needs. Then we will prioritize to make it one day professional development.
Also in number 4, it asks if you already know that date wouldn't work for you, then give us some ideas, because we want to really make this a regular kind of gathering, so help us to meet those time needs as well.
And Kristen and Umi, the food was lovely. It
That
really
was
was.
Kimberly and Donna too.
Well,
Yeah.
Oh, and
Donna, all the
Rachel.
team
members,
lovely.
yeah. And decorations all pretty
And thank you for the little mugs.
Yeah.
And are there questions for any of us?
Yes.
I was just gonna ask, when you said earlier to recommend other courses, you mean for the 6 units of electives, correct? Because there's very little to recommend outside of the program.
Those would be for if they're not doing this program. If they know the day they walk in that this is what they want to do, then we have the prescribed courses for them to take.
Yeah.
But if they aren't in this program, they're in child development, and we have a student who comes and says, I've completed all my major requirements and I have 10 more units to take, what should I take? I want to go into special ed. Then we have the tools to advise them on what to take with those extra units. That's probably the situation I've encountered most often is a student who just needs units, and so having a list of kind of those courses that we can recommend or the areas.
And by that, do you mean the courses that are in the ACT program? Is that what you mean?
No, so are you
The
talking about
alternatives.
the handout? On page 14. It gives, like if they're interested in early childhood, so that student who comes and says, I need 3 more classes to graduate, then this is a list that Cindy put together that lets us know what classes we might advise those students to take that might best prepare them if that's kind of their future interest. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but these are for students that are in the ACT.
No.
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 Oh, okay.
ACT is already prescribed, so
Right.
you just have to follow. But these students,
For
other
concepts.
students,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, okay.
Right, so they certainly could, but it would add to the time. Because of the accelerated timeline, it's very prescribed
Right,
after the first 2 years when they're done with their GED.
okay.
But yes, I mean, they could do them for the 6 units of electives. However, we strongly recommend that those 6 units of electives are also upper division GE classes,
Okay,
which then eliminates all these courses.
okay.
Sorry, it's complicated.
And then
But
my
we do also have like a program listing out all the precise courses, but really the flexibility in the ACT program is in the general education requirements and how they fulfill those. But other than that, the upper division is pretty prescribed. Go ahead.
And then, sorry, my understanding then is that, so as you mentioned at the end, that this is, you get your BA, your multiple subject, and your mild moderate credential, and then in the future you're working on the other
Right.
specializations. Does that mean that currently they take about 6 years, and if you want the alternative? Okay,
It may be longer too, yes.
okay.
It depends on, you have a question, right?
Yeah, do you have an extra sheet of the blue paper?
Blue paper,
Okay.
yes. Yeah. You can use one, yes. Okay, then if we don't have any more questions, and thank you so much. On behalf of our core team, we have a core team that work together very collaboratively with a strong leadership. Again, Dr. Wang and then, our associate deans and dean and chairs are helping this grant, and wonderful colleagues. We all work together. So we will have an answer in future, because I don't know the answer, but they know the answer, so I'll go there. So yeah, so thank you so much. And do you have anything to say? Okay, then.